Okay, this is Two Wolves. It is nearly midnight on the 29th/30th of March, and we just had an earthquake at Easter Island, of all things. So, given the last two videos I made, we've not talked about Cascadia and its results, if the Cascadia fault should go or the Juan de Fuca plate should shatter, for a while. I really believe that these landslides depicted in the last two videos are a very blatant wake-up call. Let's look at this article, which came out just not long ago in the Peninsula Daily News. And at last, officials are being a bit more upfront about actual results of a major quake. Aftermath of huge peninsula quake excuse me, would inundate communities. A town-by-town analysis by Paul Gottlieb, Peninsula Daily News. And here's a pretty comprehensive chart showing only some of these faults. The Cascadia, the Pacific Plate, Explorer Plate, Juan de Fuca Plate, Gorda Plate, and then BC, Washington, Oregon, Northern California. The whole thing is actually the Cascadia subduction zone, of course, as we know. This is the Nootka fracture zone here, just a little bit, nearly on the southern end of Vancouver Island, not quite, right through here, and coincidentally is adjacent to the opening of the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Strait of Georgia runs here. The near record magnitude 8.8 earthquake that rocked Chile on February 27 resonated here on the northern Olympic Peninsula, here, with tsunami advisories that resulted in mere inches of a splash. But experts say the megathrust trembler arising from the Cascadia subduction zone off the Washington state coast would be even greater at 9.1. So you see how they've gone from massive denial and oblivious, blowing it all off, really, about 2 years ago, to getting a lot more specific. And I don't want to say honest, these are officials, but let's read on. I won't read the whole article. I just want you to have this, bookmark this, please, and share it. Keep it if you live in this area or have loved ones who do. They also say the huge quake the U.S. Geological Survey reports only 4 worldwide at 9-point magnitude or greater since 1900, would create a giant wave that would race across the Pacific, aiming right for our coast. Very likely right through here. The last such quake was in 1700. Experts say there's no doubt that another will happen. They just don't know when. Some of this we've heard before. A minimum 10-foot tsunami would hit the Pacific coastline of the peninsula in a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, hitting coastal towns, then curling up the Strait of Juan de Fuca. It's this way, said Tim Walsh, chief hazards geologist for the State Department of Natural Resources. Could go up here to Vancouver also. Areas in the immediate vicinity of the shorelines would be flooded, he said, citing DNR earthquake models. Now they're saying residents should have now 3 weeks of food and water on hand in preparation for a Cascadia earthquake. Clallam County Emergency Management Program Coordinator Jamie Wisecup said, below are brief assessments of the impact of such a tsunami on the peninsula's coastal communities from interviews with Walsh and county, city, and tribal officials. Go here for more. If you live in the area or have loved ones who do, or if you live on Vancouver Island in particular, pay close attention. At La Push, the Quileute tribal community of La Push would see more devastation than any on the peninsula. It's the first time they've admitted this. The earthquake would generate an estimated 14-foot wave, he said. They've got a lot of infrastructure at very low elevations, he said. Inundation areas include Rialto Beach and the Quileute River area, said John Schilling, Earthquake Tsunami Program Manager for the state's Emergency Management Division. They've been downplaying that. We've been following the Quileute's rather desperate attempts to acquire more land that's in a safer area, and anyway, it's ongoing. The lower village is pretty much within the inundation area. That's the ancient village where most people live. But there are portions of the upper part that are outside, Schilling said. Well, the state has done all of this, developed evacuation routes with signs, directing residents the fastest way to get high ground. The state are the ones who put the Quileute down at tideline. The signage works in concert with evacuation brochures. Bloody lot of good that's going to do when you've got 2 minutes to move. The community also has all-hazard alert broadcast sirens. Having lived on the peninsula, most often these sirens don't work during tests. Again, most often these sirens don't work during tests in many parts of the peninsula. In Nia Bay on the Macaw Res, an estimated 10-foot wave would probably inundate low-lying areas downtown, which is most of the village, said Andrew Wink, Macaw Emergency Management Coordinator. The Macaw tribe has 2 of these broadcast sirens, and the population has evacuation areas to gather at above the flood zone. Local roadways would be extensively damaged, and if you've ever been there, nobody's going anywhere if roadways are damaged. The whole downtown is kind of sandy soil, so that would provide minimal protection, he said, adding few houses would survive, probably none actually, without significant damage from shock and water. But the 200-slip Macaw Marina would likely survive 10-foot waves. It's enough for 10 foot of freeboard at high tide, said Bob Buckingham. There are no plans for evacuation towers or breakaway buildings. Okay. Clallam Bay CQ. There's a couple, I won't name them, but there's a couple of our immediate Gamley that live in this area. A tsunami would inundate areas north of Highway 112, including Kaidaka Point, Siku Point, and Slip Point, Front Street to Highway 112, Pish River Road, and surge up the Pish, Siku, and Clallam rivers, effectively cutting off everybody. Inundate areas. This is the northern tip of the peninsula. Again, there's a helpful warning siren. Can't count on it. Other sirens are placed here. They usually don't go off during tests. The warning siren would be followed up by instructions for evacuation. Lower Elwha Reservation would be flooded. The lower part of the res, which is where everyone lives, would get extensive flooding, although the road is outside the inundation area. The tribe held an earthquake emergency evacuation drill last year that showed the owl hazard alert broadcast siren near the tribal center was not loud enough to notify Head Start children and other tribal members. So the tribe is exploring the acquisition of a second siren, tribal chairwoman Frances Charles said. I would say we're a little over 50% prepared, Charles said. We still have a few things to iron out. Isn't that gracious? I would not be that gracious. Port Angeles, 10-foot waves from an offshore undersea earthquake would flood the waterfront, damaging really all of downtown, taking it out, really, and some homes in low-lying areas, as well as Edda's Hook, where the Coast Guard are. I don't think anything would come up the hill, Walsh said. The city expects a 1-hour warning for an approaching offshore tsunami, giving time to get to the high ground. There'd be less time to escape a wave produced in the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Increasingly, as we know, there's local EQs in the Strait of Juan de Fuca. So this is not a very encouraging. Of concern would be boats moored to marinas. You have to make a decision of whether or not to send boats to deeper water, Walsh said. That would be water 100 to 200 feet deep. So they're basically, he's saying, so you wouldn't get a wave that far out. The issue is a matter of time. If you're caught while you're trying to do that without having gotten very far offshore, it could be worse than you encountering high currents. If you only have an hour, that might not be enough time. Probably won't be. Squim, a wave would probably inundate Dungeness Spit, not really affecting but drowning the keepers of the lighthouse. I'm from here. I'm just giving it a straight deal, Walsh said. And he's worried about the marina. I'm more worried about the people who live in Dungeness and the keepers of the lighthouse. And possibly, if it's summertime, maybe a lot of people out on the spit playing. Port Townsend. Scientists predict a rapid tide, perhaps 10 feet high, would hit the downtown historic district and the marinas south of downtown, flooding both and damaging some of the city's old buildings. Old building foundations may give way, Port Townsend City Manager Dave Timmons has said. Don't forget what I told you about the bluffs around Port Townsend collapsing and perhaps causing further waves. North Beach, with as many as 500 residents, probably would have to be evacuated. Okay. One thing we learned from the Sumatran earthquake was that the currents are probably going to be more lateral than onrushing coming down the strait. Probably. However, that's unless, of course, the quake was generated in the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Discovery Bay would likely be flooded. It's definitely in the 50-foot parameters, where we recommend everyone who lives in Discovery Bay evacuate to at least 50 feet above sea level. And again, be prepared to be on your own for 3 weeks. Hood Canal would be minimally affected, and so would as is true for the Southern Peninsula. Again, if this applies to you or anyone you know and love, and or if you live on Vancouver Island, especially on the west side or in Victoria, please save this, pass it on. Oh, blessings to all of you, and this is Two Wolves Out. Ah, woo. We're all related.